Hello. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Horizon Church Sutton Senior Pastors Update.
It's good to be back with you this week. Hope you're all feeling well and doing all right. And a couple of things. Judith is going to be on the news tonight. Yes. She's going to be a number. When they say how many people have been vaccinated today, she's going to be one of the 363 million thousand people that day. So one of those numbers is Judith. She's had her jab today.
Team Oxford.
Yeah, well, I'm a Pfizer man myself. In fact, I'm going to be on the news as well because I'm one of the ones that's been vaccinated so far. In that number, you see? Always going to be in that one.
He has to try and get in on everything, doesn't he?
Just saying, just being...
Anyway,
in
right.
the interest of accuracy.
As you heard on Sunday, SHP have asked us for our help. Mm-hmm. Could we provide any volunteers to help with their community fridge shop, which will be on Hill House on the Rose Hill. They're going to launch in mid-April, and they need volunteers on a Thursday and Friday morning from 10 till 12. So if that's something you think you can help with, I don't know, once, twice, 3 times a month, every week for a bit, I don't know if that's something you think you can get involved in, please could you contact Rachel, admin at horizonchurchsutton.org, or contact me directly and we'll get that set up. You will need a DBS check, so we need to get those things done as soon as possible. It'd be great if we could help SHP with that project to put cheaper food in the hands of people that need it.
Yeah, and it's right on our doorstep. It's right on the estate, pretty much. So something we can really do. Brian and Jackie, we were delighted to see them yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was yesterday. And Judith and I and Viv went over to see them, and we just had to move a few things around in their garden. That was no problem. But they do need to have just a little bit of gardening done at the front of their house. It's like a square that needs a bit of weeding. It's really not bad. If you want to see bad, come to my house. But there's a bit of weeding to do. Brian will tell you what the weeds are and what the plants are. So
experience necessary.
Because I don't know. And a bit of grass just to cut round. It's like a square. It's not a lot, but it means the world. It would mean the world to Brian and Jackie. Lovely to see them both. They're doing well. But we want to stand with them and help them. So again, if you can help with that, get in touch with
us directly or Rachel admin at both of those things will get to us, obviously.
Yeah.
It'd be great to help them out.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts this morning from Exodus. A lot of quite a number of our pastors' updates and things will be coming from the Old Testament because we're both reading through the Bible in a year again, and that's where they tend to start at the beginning. And something struck me. It was about the opportunity to go into the promised land. You know, Moses had led the children of Israel out of Egypt, and God was showing them the land they were going to. And so they sent out 12 spies, one from each of the tribes. So that was very democratic, wasn't it? So they have a representative from each tribe. And in Exodus 13, they come back to report. After exploring the land for 40 days, the men returned to Moses, Aaron, and the people of Israel. They reported to the whole community what they had seen and showed them the fruit they had taken from the land. Well, if you read the previous verses, they found they cut down clusters of grapes so large that it took 2 of them to carry it on a pole between them. They also had samples of pomegranates and figs. So they gave a report on everything they'd seen and some of the fruit that they were able to harvest. This was their report to Moses. We arrived in the land you sent us to see, and indeed it is a magnificent country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is some of its fruit as proof. But the people, well, that was good, right? That's a good report. It's lovely. It's fruit you couldn't even dream of.
Big opportunity.
It's amazing. That was a really good report, and all 12 of them agreed with the report so far. They reported it back. It is amazing. But then we get to verse 28, and you always kind of go, oh, when the verse starts with a but. But. Oh, they said, but the people living in the land are powerful, and their cities and towns are fortified and very large. We also saw descendants of Anak who are living there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites and Jebusites and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan Valley. Oh my word, yet the fruit's great, the land's great, but there's so many people there, and they are so powerful and so big. Really, I don't, that's not good. But then, in verse 30, there's another but. But this is a positive but. But Caleb, one of them, tried to encourage the people as they stood before Moses. Let's go at once to take the land. We will certainly be able to conquer it with God. So we've got a negative but. Yeah, it's great, but it's too much for us. And a positive but. It's great, and with God, I mean, we can do it, guys. So we have a difference. So 10 said but negative, and 2, Caleb and Joshua, said but positive. We can't, okay? So in verse 31, the negative buts came back, and the other men who explored the land answered them, we can't go up against them. So they've done a negative but, and now it's turned into a can't. Notice the shift here, and it gets worse. We can't go because they're stronger than we are. They're so spread, so they spread. I mean, they're just like, no, we can't. So they've gone from a but it's hard, probably impossible, to absolutely no, we can't. And if they'd left it there and their opinion, then it would have been up to Moses and the other leaders to go and talk to God to decide, the report's good, but there is a challenge. What do you say about it, God? But again, no. They weren't the but people that were negative. The 10 of them weren't happy at that. They weren't satisfied with just their opinion being heard. This is what they did. In verse 32, so they spread discouraging reports about the land amongst the Israelites, amongst the rest of the people. The land, here we go, listen to this. It's escalating all the time. The land we explored will swallow up any who live there. Oh, come on, guys. What's it going to do? Earthquake and open them up? All the people we saw were huge. It's gone from being big people to huge. We even saw giants there. Oh, come on, guys. The descendants of Anak. Now, they were big people, those descendants. They were pretty tall. In fact, I was at my jab today and I met a guy who was 6'8". He was pretty tall. I don't know what Anak people are.
Only 2 jabs.
And then they said, it's escalating, right? It will swallow us up. They're huge. We even saw giants. And then it starts putting into emotive stuff now. We felt like grasshoppers next to them, and that is what we look like to them. Oh my word. The 10 were really doing a good spin. The 10 took it upon themselves to spread their own opinion and what their decision. They already decided we ain't going, even though the fruit's great. We can't do that. And to reinforce that, they just went around and they spread all of that to the people, telling them, wasn't sufficient to say to Moses, this is our report, you go and decide, you talk to God. No. They had to have an opinion on and they had to make sure their opinion was in the minds of the people. And, oh my goodness. But you see, Joshua and Caleb saw it differently. And I want to tell you why they saw it differently. I'm just going to get my computer over here, because I've Googled... Oh, sorry, I'm blocking you out there. I've Googled Joshua, right, in the preceding verses and a couple of books. In Exodus, Moses says to Joshua, choose some men and go out and fight the Amalekites tomorrow. This was in Exodus 17. So Moses trusted Joshua to choose people to go and fight a battle against some people that were opposing them. So Joshua, in verse 10, fought the Amalekites, and then in verse 13, Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. And then in Exodus 17:14, then the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of the Amalekites from under heaven. Joshua appears again. Exodus 24 verse 13, Moses set out with Joshua his assistant and went up the mountain of God to meet God. Exodus 33:11, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one would speak to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young assistant Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. He was in the tent of meeting when Moses was meeting God. And, you know, he was then chosen to go out as one of the 12. Now, Joshua had all that experience. He'd obviously shown some potential because he was chosen to fight the Amalekites. He witnessed the Amalekites winning. He could see that when God says, go fight, we're going to win, that's exactly what it was. He also spent time in the presence of God, so he knew how big God was. Stuff how big the giants were and these people. He knew how big God was. So he saw the land and he saw the challenge, but he saw it through the eyes of experience, faith, and relationship with God, and that changed his opinion about what they should do next. And I was thinking, firstly, we need to be careful how we interpret situations and issues. We really need to be careful how we interpret them, and we may have an opinion, and it might be a right opinion, but we ought to filter that through God, through the scripture, through talking to other people. Just make sure that the opinions and the conclusions we draw and the action we're going to take or the things we're going to say are actually right. We're seeing through the right spectacles, whether we're seeing, through experience and faith in God, what God has to say, not just what we can see with our physical eyes or work out with our common sense, because as you clearly see in the Bible, a lot of what God asked people to do was not common sense at all. I mean, you take Gideon and going to fight all those hundreds and thousands of people in the Midianites with a few men, a torch, and about one sword between them. I mean, it's ridiculous, not common sense. But if God says do it, then that is common sense. So we need to be careful what conclusions we draw from stuff in our own lives, nationally, things that are happening. We need to do that. And secondly, your opinion does and can influence others for the positive or the negative. Yep. And in Numbers 14, it talks about in verse 1 to 4, this is the 10, this is the influence the 10 had. All the people, after they'd heard all this stuff from the 10, bigging it up, this is their reaction after they heard their report on what they were saying and their spin. Then all the people began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. Oh my word, are we reacting or what? Their voices rose in a great chorus of complaint against Moses and Aaron. And here we go. We wish we had died in Egypt, or even here in the wilderness, they wailed. They are getting a bit extreme. Why is the Lord taking us into this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and little ones will be carried off as slaves. Let's go out of here and return, return to Egypt.
To slavery.
I mean, my goodness, those 10 did a good job spinning this story. They just overreacted. And then verse 40, if it can get any worse, then they plotted amongst themselves, let's choose a leader to go back to Egypt.
Right.
Oh my goodness, they were now going to start an uprising and choose another leader that's going to do what they say and go back to Egypt and not go into the promised land. So what you can say has influence on people. Clearly the 10 had a massive influence. But then Caleb and Joshua, yes, the positive buts. They, verse 6, the two men who had explored the land, Joshua and Caleb, tore their clothing. They were pretty cross about all of this. They said to the community of Israel, the land we explored is a wonderful land, and if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey, and he will give it to us. Do not rebel against the Lord, and don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them. Good lads, well done. They were saying, come on guys, don't overreact. Come on, keep that focus on God. If he says it, he'll do it. Well, the outcome, if you've read your Old Testament, is not very favourable. With verse 10, but the whole community began to talk about escalation, stoning Joshua and Caleb. Let's silence the positive people. Let's kill them, and then we won't have them arguing against it. That's what they decided. And then God's presence came down, and he'd had enough, and you can read it for yourself in Numbers 14 and what he had to say about the things. But do you know the consequence was of a bad report, of interpreting things, how they saw it, the challenge, we don't feel that we could possibly do it. Whereas a person who was involved in a battle, orchestrated by God, helped by God, read that. Moses had to have his hands held up because whatever held his staff up, they were winning. Joshua was in the valley fighting. You know, that was a miracle, and Joshua knew it, so he knew that God could do all of this. The outcome of the people listening to the 10 rather than the 2 was God said, right, you're not going in. In fact, you're going to wander around this wilderness for another 40 years until the generation of the 10 are all gone. Till the negative spinners have, and their descendants have gone. Then you'll go in. And do you know who went in? Joshua and Caleb. They still got the promise.
The men of faith.
40 years later, but they got in there. So what you say and how you interpret things and your opinion can affect people, and it affected this generation, the people of Israel, for years and years to come. They eventually did go in, and Joshua led the people, and that was great. But if those 10 had just given their report, which they did, and given their opinion, and then put that over to the leaders to go and talk to God, who had sorted it all out before. In fact, he just led them miraculously out of Egypt with 10 plagues. I mean, for goodness sake, one plague for each of those 10 blokes, those bad guys, those guys that gave a bad report. If they kind of looked at all of that and just given it to Moses, maybe, you know, when Moses came back, or God showed them another miracle, or faith was inspired in them. But no. They went and they tittle-tattled amongst the people, swayed the people to active rebellion, and God said, that's it, I've had enough. You're not going in.
Yep.
So we need to be careful.
Yeah.
The opinions that we draw, the conclusions that we draw, and what we communicate. If you don't know its truth, zip it. Because even just having a throwaway opinion and stuff, and in our society at the moment with all the vaccine and things, there's all sorts of spin going on and stories and misinformation and stuff. We need to be really careful.
Social media gives a platform to people who don't know what they're talking about, by and large. Not everybody, but everybody's on a level playing field. They can talk rubbish, and it has authority because it's on that. And isn't it true that fear promotes criticism, division and defeat? And it's interesting that those 10, we all know the names of Joshua and Caleb, but who can name the 10? Yeah. They had no part in the future that God had for his people because they had fear and they didn't have faith. Yep. And if they'd have gone into the promised land, they'd have been causing trouble there and doing stuff. So I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about attitudes. Let's be people who encourage, build one another up, and let's do it together.
Yeah, and with a positive report, it doesn't have to
Absolutely.
be an opinion on something that's happening in the news. It can just be a positive report. You know, if God has done something great or answered your prayer
It's
or
encouraging.
something happened at church online on Sunday,
Yeah.
whatever, or God has been faithful to you, share that good report to people, not
Yeah,
forcing them, but naturally sharing that. And we're doing the Lent book, and one of the things this week was quite challenging. It said that people often are keen to go into work and share with their friends, oh, did you see that programme on television last night? Or I cooked this amazing meal, or this gadget I've just bought has just changed my life. But are we as natural and as keen and as enthusiastic to share the good things that God has done in our lives? We need to up the good reports in a natural way without pushing it down people's throats, but not to shy off from that. So let's raise the good reports to other people, things that God's doing in our life, in our church and community. Let's focus on those. Let's share those, and let's just keep the whole negative stuff that could influence people for the worst. Let's
Encourage
just,
one another, build one another up.
Yeah.
Well, we've been a long time this morning between us.
Well, it's me.
But there we go. Good to be with you today, and we are looking and praying about when we can meet together again on Sundays, and we will let you know. But we want to do it right, and we want to, okay. So it's about time we went now.
Yeah, because the clock's striking, so you've got that as well now. So,
All right.
guys.
God bless you. Have a
Good
great
reports.
week.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye bye.